Hey everybody, it's Dave here from Dragonhill Games, and I'm back at you with another awesome Pioneer deck tech. Just like its modern cousin, this deck's all about dropping a bunch of badass beasties onto the battlefield and setting them loose. That's right, it's time for the wildlife to take back this game, so let's look at how we can accomplish this in Pioneer. Before we get started, I just want to give a shout out to Nick for coming at me with his version of the deck, as well as Jeff, Jacob, and Dave for their input on the final list. That's the great thing about this new format Pioneers, you can sit around with a bunch of good deck builders and come up with some awesome new deck ideas. The general idea behind any zoo deck is that we want to drop bigger and badder creatures every turn on curve, and this deck is well suited to do just that. Ideally, we want to be starting the game with either a Pelt Collector or an Experiment 1. Either of these two can easily be swinging as a 3/3 on your turn 2 and become significant threats as the game progresses. Zoo decks are the definition of aggro, and Burning Tree Emissary is the gatekeeper that has the keys to all of the wildlife compounds. For just 2 mana, we get a 2/2 creature that when she enters the battlefield adds a red and green mana to our mana pool, which we can easily dump into something like a Voltaic Brawler or a Gruul Harpooner. When Voltaic Brawler enters the battlefield, we get 2 energy, which we can later use to give it +1/+1 and trample on any turn that it attacks. And Gruul Harpooner is excellent in the 2-drop slot in that it's a 3/2 with reach and has the ability to fight any flying creatures your opponent may have when it enters the battlefield. Imagine for a moment a line that looks something like this. Turn 1 we drop a Pelt Collector into a turn 2 Burning Tree Emissary, following up with a Voltaic Brawler. Now we're swinging with a 3/3 Pelt Collector, and your opponent is staring down a board that looks like this. A 3/3 Pelt Collector, a 2/2 Burning Emissary, and a 3/2 Voltaic Brawler on your turn 2. Staying on curve, an excellent turn 3 drop is Gruul Spellbreaker. This Ogre Linebreaker is extremely versatile with the ride mechanic in that if we still have a Pelt Collector kicking around, we can have it enter it with a +1/+1 counter, which will buff up our Pelt Collectors. If not, we can just give it haste, and he naturally has trample and the added bonus of being hexproof and giving us hexproof on our turn. Bone Crusher Giant is another excellent turn 3 drop in that we're getting a 4/3 that has the added bonus of whenever he becomes the target of a spell, he deals 2 damage to that spell's controller. And he has some excellent late game versatility with his Stomp Adventure mechanic. We can deal 2 damage to any target. And finally, let's look at a couple of great ways to close out the game. Combat Celebrant is a 4/1 for 3 mana that gives us an extra combat phase when we exert him. And Reckless Bushwhacker has a surge cost of just 1 red and 1, and when we pay his surge cost, all of our creatures get +1/+0 and gain haste until end of turn. And combining these two together in the same turn will result in a massive double combat swing that will leave your opponent curled up in the fetal position. Domri Anarch of Bolas is an excellent include in this deck in that his static ability gives all our creatures +1/+0. His +1 ability adds either red or green to our mana pool and makes our creatures uncounterable till end of turn, while his -2 ability is great for getting blockers out of the way by having one of our creatures fight one of our opponent's creatures. And finally, we're running 4 copies of Atarka's Command, which for the most part we'll be using to blast our opponent's face for 3 and giving our creatures +1/+1 and reach until end of turn. Since we're running nearly 30 creatures in the deck, Collected Company is an auto include. For just 4 mana and at instant speed, we look at the top 6 cards of our library, and then we can pick any 2 creatures with CMC 3 or less, which by the way is every creature in this deck, and put them straight onto the battlefield. Then we put the remaining cards in the bottom of our library in any order. Casting this at the end of your opponent's turn will mean anything that you hit is going to be swinging on your turn, and hitting something like a Combat Celebrant is probably going to be GG. Alright, let's talk lands. I chose 4 Mana Confluence in this deck because I wanted the consistency of being able to drop everything on time and on curve. I also included 4 Stomping Grounds and 4 Rootbound Crags, along with 5 forests and 5 mountains. Okay, before we talk sideboard, I want to take this opportunity to thank you if you're a subscriber. We really appreciate your support. And if not, now's a great time to consider hitting that subscribe button. We post at least 2 videos every week. As always, a great sideboard needs great answers to today's best decks. 1 more copy of Domri Anarch of Bolas gives us some resiliency against control opponents while providing additional fight support against other aggressive decks. Grafdigger's Cage gives us some support against graveyard shenanigans, while Thrashing Bronodon provides extra resiliency against artifact and enchantment strategies, on top of being a pretty good beater in its own right. One extra Gruul Harpooner gives us answers against opponents running a lot of flyers. And finally, Pithing Needle helps us shut down combo decks and early Planeswalker drops. And Veil of Summer is one of the best sideboard answers every format has gotten in a long time. If you're playing green, there is no reason why you shouldn't be playing this card. It's excellent against control and protects against things like turn 1 Thoughtseize. Alright, I really hope you enjoyed having a look at my Pioneer Gruul Zoo deck list. If you did, smash that like button, and we'll see you again soon.